Good morning. My name is St. John Eberly, and I'm the Communications Director with American Rivers. With me today is Amy Marquis and Dana Romanoff, and we are here to talk about our upcoming film called Avanyu. American Rivers recently launched this film set along the stunning Wild and Scenic Rio Grande River in northern New Mexico. The Rio Grande was designated as Wild and Scenic when the act was originally established in 1968. In celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act in 2018, American Rivers has produced this film and a few others as part of our new 5,000 Miles of Wild campaign. The 5,000 Miles of Wild campaign the goals of the 5,000 Miles of Wild campaign is to designate 5,000 new miles of wild and scenic rivers across the country, as well as collect 5,000 of your stories about how you connect to rivers also across the country. The film's main character, Luis Hino, is a Tesuque Pueblo elder, and he, along with his family, give us a glimpse into the importance of the Rio Grande to him, to his family, and to us all. The film was directed by NPX, National Park Experience, which is a collaboration of two highly talented filmmakers with us today, Dana Romanoff and Amy Marquis, both of which are with us and going to have a chat. Ladies, welcome to the video.
Thank you, St. John.
Thanks, St. John.
So first, right off the bat, how did this film come about, and why were you interested in taking on a project like this?
I'll answer that. Well, we had worked with you and American Rivers before on a previous film, and so American Rivers approached us to make a film about the Rio Grande in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Wild and Scenic Act, and I think we were really excited to collaborate again. We have a lot of respect for the films that American Rivers is putting out there, really high quality, and a similar approach in that it's intimate and authentic storytelling. It's really character driven, and so this was a chance for us to explore a neighboring state of New Mexico and a new section of a new river, and to work together again.
Excellent. And have you done other films like this in the past, themed or natural, but also indigenous cultures, other themes that were similar to what you did in this film?
We have. I'll jump in for this one. So one of the most recent film we made under the National Park Experience series was called Canyon Song. And that featured this beautiful Navajo family in Canyon de Chelly National Monument, who's been farming the land there for generations, and whose children are doing some really exciting things within the community to make sure that the Navajo culture lives on for many more generations to come. So it was really neat, and quite a different story and experience to jump into this story with a Pueblo family in New Mexico, but also felt familiar in some ways. And yeah, it's always, these are communities and voices and stories that aren't always told or given much of a platform. So we just really appreciate the fact that American Rivers wanted to dive in on this and really shed light on a beautiful family business that's unfolding on the Rio Grande.
Awesome. Dana, any comments on that?
I guess just to say also that in the previous films that we have made, and our approach is, yes, there are films about natural places and national parks, but we are introduced to those places and are connected to those places through people. And so that's what this film helps to do.
And speaking of people, so what was the process that you were able to go through to find the main character for the film, Louis?
Should I take it, Amy?
Go for it.
Well, St. John, you had heard of this legendary storyteller and river guide and storyteller named Cisco, who is the owner of Los Rios River Runners down outside of Taos in New Mexico. And so we started off with a conversation with him. And he was telling us, just a lot of information, and really impassioned person, and had a lot of stories, but throughout his stories, there was this common thread of kind of the soul of the river and the connection to the place, and the native, this native business partner and their feast and float trip that they do on the river. So that, I think, immediately kind of jumped to our attention, and we wanted to meet Louis, his partner, who we mentioned in so many stories about how he goes down the river and shares the native connection to the river. So we got on a call with Louis Hena, with Sinjin, Amy, and myself, and just hearing his roots and connection to the land, and plus that it's his family business, and doing this float trip, and how he believes really strongly in sharing his native stories and knowledge, and passing on that knowledge to other generations, to his children, and to other cultures, and sharing, their way, the native way, with kind of the white way, and finding that kind of common ground as you float down the river, and through that, finding a common ground as people and a connection to a land. He had a lot to teach and a lot to share, so we were really interested in working with him.
Amy, what was your experience working with Louis on this project?
Oh, it was super rewarding. He's a fascinating man. I have so much respect for him. Incredibly intellectual, and has a deep knowledge of science. One of the things that was cool that wasn't quite relevant enough to include in the film is he calls himself a seed warrior, and takes this very spiritual and also practical approach to preserving the seeds that are part of his cultural heritage and that his community relies upon. And I want to say he has a seed cellar. Dana, I didn't get to see this. You might have seen this on your scouting trip. But this underground seed cellar that could rival some of the seed storage that you have at like the Smithsonian. So he's an incredible leader in his community, and just this really really fascinating kind of father figure. I felt like he was great at teaching us the ways. We went out and hunted for, not hunted, foraged for pinion pine, nuts, the pinion nuts, pine nuts, one day with them. And we're floundering around and getting sap all over our hands. And he just very patiently taught us a better way to do it. It was a neat experience. He's a fascinating man with incredible knowledge and a lot of compassion for his people's story, and also spreading that story throughout the country.
Well, and you had a scene in the film where you had been out there, you all had been out collecting the pinion nuts, pinion seeds in the outdoors, and there's a moment in the film where he's talking about we're all kernels of corn, and you see him pouring the pinion nuts into a small sack, and it was one of the more kind of romantic moments where you can feel his love for the place, and you can feel his love for the culture of his people through the pinion nuts that he's pouring into this basket.
Louis has a lot of stories and beautiful metaphors about just the interconnectivity of all of us and our connection to nature. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, so you traveled to New Mexico then, and you went on a scouting trip or two. What did you discover once you were there?
Well, I went on the scouting trip, and shortly after the Crested Butte Film Festival, and drove down to meet him from there. And well, first, New Mexico is beautiful, and that area of the Rio Grande is beautiful, but it is especially incredible when it is on fire pretty much in the fall with the yellow cottonwoods. It's an incredible time to be there. And the first night, my family, we camped along the north rim of the Rio Grande, and the beautiful campground. And it was just amazing, the kind of access that you had to the river too. I hadn't been to the Rio Grande before, and just the ability to walk down these trails and walk along the shores of it was pretty incredible. Meeting Louis was a bit of an adventure. I don't think I ever got an address from him. It was kind of like a scavenger hunt to find him. We'd had multiple calls, and he kept being like, okay, when you get to this town, call me. So I'd get to that town and I'd call him. Okay, when you get to this stop sign, call me. So I get to the stop sign. Okay, when you get to this town. That probably happened like 5 or 6 times until I was like steered into the Tesuque Pueblo. And I don't know if I really expected, I don't know what I was expecting, but I was surprised to be entering kind of a traditional Pueblo, and it was really beautiful. And we arrived at his home, and he was sitting out front of his house on his plotted land that he had obviously farmed and put a lot of work into, and sitting there with his grandchildren and his dogs. And I was nervous. Actually, he had this, this silvery hair and just kind of this air or aura of wisdom to him and calm. And I was nervous about how approaching him and just kind of my own naivety to his culture and into the place. But my husband and son were there, and they wound up being really good icebreakers. And we sat outside talking for a long time. My kid played with his grandchild, and that's always a good kind of connector. And by the end, we talked about his seeds and just a lot of common interests in sustainability and the earth, the environment, and what he does and families. And by the end of the evening, I was inside nursing on his couch, and we were talking about home births. So he's a really incredible person with a lot of interests and a lot of passions, and obviously an activist in his community. And I think it was apparent that once, we were kind of unsure of his, I think he was probably unsure of us in our approach. But I think once that was established and once we knew he was invested, him and his family were really invested in helping make this a great film.
Awesome. So then a big component of the film is the feast and float trip that you mentioned earlier. When you first thought about that part of the film, how did you think that tour was going to play into the film? And then were you surprised? I think one of the neatest parts of the film is the discussions with Crystal and how she presents herself as a guide and the next generation of person showing that river to tourists and to other interested people. Amy, how did you think that was all going to come out when you started that, and then how did you feel about the result?
Yeah, good question. So, I think what we didn't want to do was event coverage. We didn't want to, hop on the boat and say, here are this busload of people. They get on these boats and float down the river, and the end. And so, one of Dana's suggestions as we were editing, which I think worked really, really well, was to keep coming back to Crystal, to these real moments along the trip, where she's revealing parts of the story and really interesting stuff about the culture. And so we wanted the viewer to feel like they were on the float trip too. So we kind of structured the edit that way. But yeah, Crystal was just a super charismatic storyteller, and she's young and vibrant and very approachable, and we loved being able to focus on her.
During the scouting trip, I got to ride down the boat with Crystal as well. So there's quite a few siblings, and I went on one boat with Crystal. My husband went on another boat with Dawn, and we kind of divided up to see who were who were telling the stories and who we wanted to feature filming. And so we made sure during our film to grab clips of everybody. But yeah, Amy and I got to ride down twice maybe once with Crystal and to film her. And the Feast and Float provided a nice, we didn't want event coverage, but it's nice a way to like kind of ground the coverage and like have something that have a reason for like a time and a place of where we're going, and to kind of really ground the story.
Yeah, it's fantastic. The way, I think, like Amy just said, that as Crystal is talking, it's revealing part of the story through the course of this float trip. And I think it's one of the most graceful parts of the whole thing. What kind of challenges did you think you were going to face in filming Avanyu, and then what challenges actually appeared? Maybe they're the same, but you think going into something there might be, okay, these are going to be hurdles we're going to have to deal with, and then new things show up. How would you characterize the challenges for this film?
I'll jump in with one that comes to mind immediately. It's there are different communication styles when you're working with Indigenous people. and there's uniqueness within that too. But I think just Dana's scavenger hunt anecdote is a perfect one where you go in and you just have to be super respectful that there's it's often a slower pace. It's not like this type A, you can't plan out some detailed itinerary and expect everyone to sign off on it, because that's just not necessarily how they work or think or live their lives. So just from a producing standpoint, it's always a little nerve-wracking, because there are details that you want to have completely confirmed that you can't. But once you get on the ground and get into that flow and you're with people in person, you get into a better flow state, and it tends to work out. Dana, you want to talk about the Pueblo shutting down for the?
Oh yeah. So one of the scenes that we wanted to film was his whole family getting together to prep for the feast and float. The son goes out harvesting. The mom is at home and cooking with her daughters and with Louis, and they're preparing the whole day before the feast and float. And we get a message saying, "Sorry, you can't come to our house. You can't come to the Pueblo. The Pueblo is closed due to ceremony, and it's closed kind of for the entire weekend." So that was we were kind of shut out of that, and had to figure out alternative ways to show what life on a Pueblo would look like or feel like. And as we were driving down the highway past the Tesuque Pueblo, there's a cultural center. And so we stopped, and I saw like corn stalks and some beautiful adobe buildings, and we stopped and got permission and just filmed little glimpses of the cultural center to represent what the Tesuque Pueblo would look like.
Yeah, cool. Well, and some of those close-up shots of water pouring off the roof, or the corn stalks with the rain sprinkling on it. Those add so much to the visual impact of the film that I think is really great. So I'm glad you were able to find those places.
Yeah, those shots were all kind of like pre-planned shots that we knew we wanted to get, showing water hitting a seed. We had just thought we would be doing it at his house, but yeah. And
so once back in the studio, Amy, what was the process like of editing the footage and then putting the final story together?
So the way Dana and I work when we're the ones controlling the edit is we'll lay down a radio cut and really just lock in the narrative before we start messing with pulling any visuals in. And that was a really helpful process for this film. It worked well that way. So, we had all these transcripts and, kind of went through and identified, highlighted the parts that meant something and started to string together a story. And then Dana locked down that radio cut. And then it was just a matter of pulling in images, and Dana and Chuck did such a beautiful job shooting this. So it was a dream edit. And, finding the right music and getting into that flow state with the edit. It was really fun.
Yeah, I'll contribute to that too, in that we went in with the thought or the intention of using that feast and flow as a way to guide the viewers down the river too, and to kind of lead us through the story and lead us down the river. So to keep coming back to it was really nice. To also get real time and real moments, and to connect us with the characters, and then following the pacing of Louis his cadence of how he speaks, and even that section of the river was like a really slow section of the river. We shot a lot of slow-mo, and so Amy chose to weave in a lot of slow motion with it that kind of matched that pacing, and the music matched that as well. So I think it was really beautifully constructed.
Yeah, totally agree. It's excellent. So switching gears a little bit, how do you think your roles as women filmmakers informs how you tell the stories that you find? I mean, do you think your perspective is different because National Park Experience is a women-oriented filmmaking crew, or not?
I love questions like this, and I also have a really hard time with them too, because I think you look at any good film and you can't tell if it was a man or woman directing it necessarily. I think what works in the end is that it's soulful and authentic, and it speaks to a bigger message than just a single story alone. There are universal human themes in it. I think I'm very proud of the fact that we are women in this space that's typically male dominated, especially, you know, even though our films tend to be culturally focused in the outdoors, we kind of get grouped in that adventure film genre because we're shooting in a lot of national parks and natural spaces, and that's great and exciting, and again, it's nice to be, you know, women kind of holding our ground and you know, forging new paths in that arena. And I'm very proud to have a woman, you know, co-director who I've been able to work with on these films for 3 years. At the same time, there's a part of me that kind of wishes like people wouldn't see us as women. Like, so there's another film we shot in September for NPX called Confluence, and we interviewed a Navajo man who is also an Americana country singer, and he's framed as a Navajo country singer, and he was like, I just wish people would stop calling me a Navajo country singer and just call me a country singer. So it's an interesting discussion, and I think one that we should keep having, and, you know, hopefully it gets to a point someday where there are so many women, you know, making incredible films in this genre that it's not even really a discussion anymore. But Dana might have other thoughts.
That was it. I think what's unique about Amy and my approach, which again doesn't, like, it crosses gender, is we really try and collaborate and get to know our subjects and the film characters, and really wind up feeling like we're a part of that family and that our family has grown. So yeah, we just take a more intimate approach.
And I'll add one more thing quickly. I think it's not that a father couldn't do this, but I have to say, in the 2 Indigenous films that we've made, Dana has brought her son, Rio, on either the scouting trip or the first shoot, and he's acted as this amazing culture ambassador. And what's beautiful about that is people end up seeing Dana not as some, you know, invasive, you know, media journalist from the outside coming in, you know, species. Right, invasive species. You know, but they see her as a mother. And, you know, my daughter's a little too old, but too young for me to bring her on trips. But, you know, I think in that way, like the maternal role has really benefited with us earning trust with some of these subjects. Yeah,
that's wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for doing this. It's been a lot of fun, and I think really interesting to hear your perspectives on how this came about. For the audience, Avanyu will be released on February 24th, or if this is after February 24th, it was released on February 24th. You can find the film in a number of places, but AmericanRivers.org on our films page, or our Vimeo page at vimeo.com/AmericanRivers, all one word. And then in support of the 5,000 Miles of Wild campaign, our new website, 5000miles.org, will also be a landing page for the film as well, and give much more background and information around Wild and Scenic Rivers in general, and the 5,000 Miles of Wild campaign specifically. So with that, thank you, Amy. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you, St. John.
Thank you, St. John.
Rivers. It's an honor to be working on river stories and learning more as we go too about just the work that American Rivers is doing and the importance of rivers and them being the lifeblood of our world and of our country. So we need to keep protecting them. So thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
I'll echo what she said. Thank you. Great.
Thank you both. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.